Hello and good morning. Welcome in, folks. We are about to embark on our second world history discussion. Today, we're going to go a little bit more in depth into some civilizations in a particular area. And you're going to notice that it's kind of a common theme moving forward over the next couple lectures. So, today, we're going to take a look at city-states in Mesopotamia. All right? So, the Fertile Crescent. All right, what is the Fertile Crescent? You guys may have heard of this term before. Despite being an arid desert region, the Fertile Crescent, which is now modern-day Persian Gulf, became an area of agricultural abundance. So what does that mean? It means that people were able to plant and grow crops in almost unlimited amounts. Okay, this land would become known as Mesopotamia. All right, the word in Greek means land between two rivers. All right, these two rivers, which you're going to hear a lot about at the start of this class this year, is going to be the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Okay, once these rivers flooded, the rainwater provided nutrients to the soil. All right, it created a perfect area to grow crops. All right, and as we know, when you have a sufficient water supply, a civilization is able to thrive, to grow, and really to develop. Okay, and that's what we're going to start seeing here. All right, so environmental challenges. The Sumerians, all right, are going to settle into this region. All right, they encountered three major problems in their attempt to build a civilization. First, you had unpredictable flooding combined with drought, which would lead the land to become almost entirely a desert. So in modern times in the Middle East, this area is very, very dry. Okay, so when you had unpredictable flooding, that provided a challenge. So yes, the water would come and it would provide areas to grow crops, but it was not as common and as frequent as the people that were living there needed it to be. Okay, so a lot of the times the area was very dry and did not have as much water. Okay. Second, with no barriers for protection, this was an area for the Sumerians that was nearly defenseless. Okay, it really did not have a good support defensive system. There were no structures in place, so you could constantly have other invaders, other nomadic tribes moving into the area that would wreak havoc and cause a lot of problems. So the defensive systems, were not sufficient enough for the Sumerians. And then lastly, the natural resources of Sumer were limited. Building material and other necessary items were scarce. So you're not seeing a ton of trees in this area. You're seeing a lot of clay, you're seeing a lot of brick, you're seeing a lot of stone, but these natural resources were hard to come by. And therefore, it was a challenge to kind of build up and build out. Okay? All right. So how do you solve these problems as a civilization, as a people, as a society? The Sumerians took steps to adjust to these hardships. All right, to provide water, irrigation ditches were dug. So they dug into the ground. All right, this carried river water to their fields and allowed them to produce more crops. So they were able to dig down, dig deep, and get into the earth and let that water come in. Okay, for defense, they started to build city walls with bricks. Okay, so that became a priority. It became probably the utmost priority in terms of what government policies were, what they wanted to decide to do, because building that wall would help defend against some of those invaders and some of those bandits who were on the outskirts of this civilization. All right, then Sumerians are going to trade their grain, their cloth. They're going to trade their craft tools with peoples of the mountain and desert. In exchange, this is where they're going to start receiving raw materials such as stone, wood, and metal. All right, this kind of reminds me, this is a very nerdy board game, but it's one of the best board games out there. If you ever get a chance to play it, I recommend it, Settlers of Catan. Settlers of Catan is dealing with some of these trades. Whoa, hold on. Hold tight. I didn't think this was going to happen during the lecture. All right. So, you would see items that were given to the Sumerians like stone, wood, and metal, and they were able to build off of that. Okay? All right, so what do the Sumerians do? They're going to create city-states. So this is around 3000 BC. The Sumerians created multiple cities, all right, that were surrounded by fields of wheat and barley. Okay? Each of these cities developed their own cultures, their governments, and their own rulers. All right. Eventually, the emergence of city-states formed. These city-states reflect the way independent countries operate today. All right. So they were on their own. They were having their own system of government, their own economic policies, their own cultures, and their own beliefs. All right. The list of Sumerian cities or city-states include Uruk, Kish, Lagash, Umma, and Ur. Okay. Each city-state had a ziggurat. Remember that giant, futuristic-looking temple that we saw at the end of our last discussion? The ziggurat is at the center, and the city-states leaders would go there to appeal to their gods. So that was something that each city-state had, and it was something that they would make their own. They would make their own unique ziggurats. Okay? All right. Priests and rulers are going to share control. All right? Early Sumerian governments were led by temple priests. Okay, farmers would pray to the gods for a good crop season. Again, kind of makes sense. Like, hey, we want to make sure things are good. We want food to be provided. We're going to pray to the heavens and hope that our gods, provide that and help us out. The priests, they are going to act as go-betweens for the Sumerian society. They are going to be in the middle. It was believed that they had a direct connection with the gods. So a common farmer, a common citizen would talk and work with the temple priests because that was their ticket and that was their connection with their gods. Okay, during times of war, priests did not lead the city though. All right, the toughest fighter was chosen to lead the city soldiers. So the toughest dude in the entire city was deemed to be the leader of these soldiers to fight. Once the war would end, their power would subside. It would basically go away. So in times of war, again, they're called upon to fight, to act, to be strong, to be a good leader. But once the war ends in victory or defeat, they are going to return to whatever position they held prior to combat. Okay? As these Sumerian city-states started to expand, they start conducting cultural diffusion. What does that mean? Cultural diffusion. It's a big term. Okay? This is a new idea or a product that is spreading from one culture to another. So they are spreading their ideas to other peoples. So we have cultural diffusion. It's being spread to other peoples. And people are starting to adopt it. They're starting to learn from it. They're starting to emulate it, whether it be the type of clothing, whether it be maybe praying to the same gods. They're starting to adapt what the Sumerians are providing to them with cultural diffusion. Okay? Okay, let's talk about Sumerian culture. All right, the Sumerians believed that several gods controlled multiple aspects of nature. All right, this belief structure is known as polytheism, as we're going to talk about quite a bit. Polytheism is essentially multiple gods. That prefix poly means more than one and multiple. Sumerians believe that these gods were immortal and all-powerful. Sumerians would sacrifice to the gods on a regular basis, so human sacrifice was constant. They also believed that anytime a city was destroyed or flooded out, it came directly from the gods. So if something were to happen to them, whether it be a natural disaster, whether it be a catastrophic loss during a war, that was dictated by the gods. And a lot of them see it or saw it as a punishment. Okay, the Sumerian social structure consisted of kings, landholders, and priests at the top. So these, again, they're starting to create a social hierarchy. Wealthy merchants were next. These were traders. These were investors. These are people that are moving from place to place. And then you have artisans and skilled workers. And then the Sumerians did have slaves. So slaves were at the bottom. They did not have any rights. They were essentially oppressed by the people that were in the top of the Sumerian social structure. Okay? What do the Sumerians bring in terms of science and technology? They're going to bring in arithmetic and geometry, yeah. So in order to construct city walls and buildings, the Sumerians are going to use base 60 mathematics, all right? They're going to use a standard for time, 60 seconds equals 1 minute, and then 360 degrees of a circle. So they are going to use some mathematics to help construct and develop their cities. They're also going to have more architectural innovations, arches, columns, ramps, and the pyramid-shaped design of the ziggurats are going to be common architectural advancements in Sumeria. So they are able to evolve and make some really, really interesting technological advances through their architecture. Okay? And then cuneiform. Cuneiform you may have actually heard of in other places. This is the main form of Sumerian writing. These are clay tablets, all right, which would indicate various records of astronomy, chemistry, and medicine. So you have these tablets, which would be inscribed in the Sumerian style of writing. And cuneiform is what they used, and what we learn from today on a historical level. Okay, they are also going to be known as the first empire builders. So from 3000 to 2000 BC, the Sumerian city-states were constantly at war. So yes, they all had their independent identities. They had their own governments, but they're going to be fighting quite a bit for power and control of the Fertile Crescent. So around 2350 BC, a conqueror named Sargon, who led the Akkadians, guy named Sargon, he's going to defeat the city-states of Sumer. He's going to conquer vast amount of territory. And Sargon was able to establish the world's first empire. Okay, an empire is going to be our next unit. So an empire brings together several peoples, nations, and previously independent states under control of one ruler. All right, at its height, this empire controlled a vast amount of land for nearly 200 years. So the Akkadians were definitely in control. Okay, this leads us to something you guys may have heard of, the Code of Hammurabi. All right, the Babylonian Empire saw the emergence of a strict leader known as Hammurabi. All right, Hammurabi organized a very strict set of laws that would cement his legacy. All right, the code was a single, uniform code of laws that would help unify the diverse groups of people within the empire. So this is where we start seeing the concept of an eye for an eye. If you put out the eye of a neighbor, you too, as a punishment, would have your eye put out. So these codes were engraved in stone and placed all over his empire. So it's a form of control. It's a system that had severe punishments. All right, death was common if you did not acknowledge the laws. And again, it is kind of a precursor to what we start seeing with governments that have that kind of authoritative role, where you have one ruler that is going to put in some harsh laws and strict laws. But this is where we get the concept of an eye for an eye. Okay, there's a map of the Fertile Crescent. Again, you will see it. It's modern-day Iraq, Iran, even into parts of Egypt and parts of Saudi Arabia in terms of today's terms. I want you to take a look at the map, analyze it. We are going to have a second journal log, so there are going to be 5 questions that are going to coincide with this discussion. But yeah, that's it. We're going to go to Egypt next week. So we're going to take a look at Egypt and the Egyptians, which I think a lot of you guys will be really interested in. But that's the Sumerians. That's the city-states of Mesopotamia. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. All right? Thanks, guys. Have a good one.